Groove 93. Hello, everybody. This is Caring for the Community, and I have done this for the last couple of weeks. The series is called Being Unapologetically Black, and the point of this series is for us to educate the community, and the point of this series is to hear from leaders in this community that are working hard every day. They're going over and beyond, and they're willing to answer questions that you guys really want to know. So I'm going to just kick this off. I have three brilliant officers. So I have Captain Sutton. Jerry, tell him hello.
Hello, everyone.
I feel like I know Jerry personally, so I'm just going to call her Jerry. I have Assistant Chief Vaughn.
Hi.
And then I have Assistant Chief Glenn.
How are we doing, folks?
You know what I love about the three of you all? I've actually heard the three of you guys speak before this situation or the racial tension has happened in our community and in our country. And I've heard you speak candidly about your experiences. So I ask you today to do the same, to be who you are. And I know nothing different, but I'm happy that you guys accepted and said yes, because I know that you are already serving our city. And you're doing such a great job with that, but this is a good time for us to have a conversation. So I kick it off with everybody and I ask them to give me one word, just one word that gauges how you feel today based on the circumstance and the situation. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna start with Assistant Chief Glenn.
So I would say that word is resilient. Feel resilient. I mean, we weathered a lot of the storm that's come down so far, and I feel like we've done okay with it, and I still feel strong on the back end of it. So resilient.
All right, Captain Sutton.
Courageous. I'm mustering the courage to push through, regardless of how it looks, how it feels, what's been said, what's been thought of. I'm here. I'm present. I'm courageous.
Assistant Chief Vaughn.
Today, I feel hopeful.
Cool.
Why hopeful?
I seriously believe this can be a turning point in our community, and I have these high hopes that it's going to be for our friends of color. I have high hopes for that, really.
So I have a list of questions. I've done at least about 4 interviews, and sorry, my computer's going off. I've done about 4 candid interviews with leaders in the community and young Black men between the ages of 18 and 28 years old. And the conversations are the same, but they're very open and very transparent. And I just want to kick it off. I want to ask you guys, how are you doing? How are you doing through all this?
Well, I'll start that conversation. So over the last couple of days, I've spoken with some of my officers, particularly those on second shift, because those are the ones who have had to participate in the protest and making sure that citizens are safe while they exercise their freedom of speech. And so in talking to them, I wanted to get a baseline of where they were. And in listening to them, it reminded me of how I felt the first time I experienced it at their level. And I was reminded that regardless of this uniform, underneath this, we're still human beings. Mm-hmm. And although we understand the anger that the community feels and the outrage, we're still here. We're still present. We're still human beings. We still feel the pain on both sides. The pain of seeing this happen, especially by someone who wears the uniform. It's painful to see someone who is supposed to be a representative of public trust defy that trust. And then it's also painful to have to bear the brunt of their stupidity or their mistake or their misdoing, or however you want to define that. It's painful. Mm-hmm. And so being a veteran officer, looking in the faces of some of these young officers, I hear their pain, I feel their pain. I also feel the pain of the citizens. And as I said in the interview a couple of weeks ago, as the mother of a young Black man, I feel that pain also. And I've been challenged as to whether I'm blue enough or whether I'm Black enough. And as I said in my opening statement, regardless of what you think of me, at the beginning and at the end, I am going to have the courage to stay here and do the work and stand by my people as we stay here and we do the work to repair the relationship and hopefully get us on the right track so that we stay on track. Not that we circle back and bottom out again if or when something else happens, but so that we establish the relationships and maintain those relationships and work through the hardships, but also celebrate the good times, because we've had some pretty successful programs and outcomes for activities and things that have gone on in our community. And I have documentation of it. So I just, how do I feel? As Donna said before, I'm hopeful and courageous. So happy that my people are picking up some of that, hopefully picking up some of that.
Can I, Jerry she was ready for this interview, and I appreciate that. She's like, I'm gonna get it out. But I do want to ask you all, do you feel like your racial integrity has been challenged? Dana, I want to ask you that. Glenn, I want to ask you that. Do you feel like it's been challenged during this time?
I'll let Dan answer first.
Yeah, possibly. My husband and I were actually marching with the protesters the first 9 days. And we wanted to send a clear message that even that as police officers, as a police officer, I am against police brutality. Okay, I think it's important for my community to know that I am against police brutality. So I'm not sure how that's set with some folks, but I'm okay with that. That's where my heart is. We marched up until I guess until the protesters got a little bit too what's the word I'm looking for, Jerry? A little too
rambunctious.
Spicy for it. Yes, rambunctious, and I think it's important. It's a good time for these issues to be addressed. I've been very naive for a lot of years as far as racism goes. I've been intentional about trying to break that out into the community. And I think now is the time for us to break down these walls and move in a forward direction.
Yeah, your word was hopeful. And
yes,
as a mother of a Black boy myself, Jerry and our son around the same age, someone came after me on Facebook. Of course, that's the new thing. And I said, I was sending a message out to say, hey guys, be mindful of what you say on social media. We have jobs to go to on Monday. So the guy said, Donna Elle, you forget your bosses. You need to really focus on what you're doing, and I had to say, God called me to do this, and He called you to do that, and that's what makes us special, because we do things differently. Mm-hmm. With that being said, and Glenn, I do want to get your answer on this, but I also want to know, how are you holding the people that are serving next to you in the line of duty accountable as well? Because I know, Dana, you say you feel like that, and I believe you feel like that. But how are you guys holding other people accountable, or other officers that may not feel the same way?
So to that question, I'm making sure that I'm staying engaged with the folks that are working down there on the front lines. It's easy to lose track of how folks feel and how they're receiving the things that they're receiving on the front lines if you're sitting on the Amicola Highway watching it from miles away. And so I've deliberately been right there beside officers who are being yelled at, who are having not so nice things said to them, So I can take a temperature gauge on them on a very personal one-on-one basis. And when I see someone who's had their, whose cup is kind of full, like one of my guys like to use that phrase, you know, whose cup is full, we tag them out. Hey, you need a break. You need to get off the line. You need to get away from some of this madness, because you don't want people's feelings to spill over and make them behave in a way that we wouldn't appreciate as their bosses. And so I think we've all, Donna, Jerry, all of us included. Donna, like she said, she marched right alongside the protesters. We've all been very, very much engaged to make sure that we're watching not only each other, but our younger officers as well.
Thank you for that. So how are you doing?
You know, so anyone who knows me, these two ladies in particular, will tell you that I am eternally optimistic, right? And so I've been yelled at for 25, almost 26 years now by folks who aren't necessarily happy with some action that police have taken. So my skin is as thick as this desk I'm sitting in front of. So most things don't bother me. It rolls right off of my back. But I have been very, very conscious to make sure that some of our younger officers are doing well, you know, also. Because I know the way they receive things doesn't happen the same way that I receive them. And so to answer your question, I'm doing great. I wish this thing would kind of level off, but until it does, I'm just going to ride it out.
You know, you say level off. So I think about, you know, this is a time, you know, things I've always said through the hardest trials comes, like you said, optimism. And even though that this could level off, do you think this is a teaching opportunity?
Definitely. I think, and when I say level off, I mean, so you protest and you bring attention to a problem, right? That's the goal for protesting, to bring attention to an issue. Well, that has clearly been done. Everybody is very clear on what problems exist. When I say level off, I mean, let's get to the next phase. Let's figure out the solutions and the strategies we can put together to make the problems that we brought attention to better. And so that's the part I'm looking forward to sitting down with folks, you know, who might have a different opinion from what I have about how these things should work out. I'm looking forward to that part, because I think we've brought attention to the issue. You know, like Dana said, she marched alongside of folks and heard it firsthand what their opinions were. Right. And we get it. Now it's time to put those arguments and those concerns into action.
When you were marching, Dana, did you have your uniform on? Okay. She said yes. Yeah, you did have it. Okay. I was interested in knowing that, you know, because the community does know who you are. But you know, what made you say I want to wear my uniform and march during that time?
Because it's something that's close to our hearts. Not only the police brutality, but the racism part of it. And we had great conversations with some of the protesters in those crowds. Every single night we were approached by one or more protesters just wanting to have a conversation about where the police department stood and, you know, what all was going on. So we formed some great relationships in those protests. But I think it's important that the racism issue be addressed right along with the police brutality. So yeah, Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I've sat back and watched Jerry for years as a mother.
Yep.
Being heavily engaged in the Chattanooga community,
yes.
Pouring into leadership Chattanooga classes, pouring into young boys and young girls as they're coming up and growing up. And even me calling her with personal things, she has always been such an even keel person. I think, you know, it could be the worst situation going on, and Jerry is all officer, all protector. You know what I mean? And I say that, you know, I ask you this, Jerry, were you surprised by what happened when you think about Ahmaud, you think about Breonna? You know, were you surprised about any of this?
So Donna,
I know I said a lot.
You and I can both agree that we are very passionate mothers. We love our boys like nobody's business, and we'll go to battle for our sons on any and every level. So seeing those things play out in the media, I felt physically ill. And obviously, when you see things like that happen, you don't see the person that it happened to, you see your son.
Yes.
And every time that I have seen a young Black man screaming for his life, be it at the hands of police or anybody else, of course I see my son.
Right.
And I'm sickened by that. I'm bothered by that. I have lost sleep over that, which is the reason why I've tried to be so engaged with youth, boys, because I have a son, but also young girls, and just getting them to know how things work, how things go, and hoping to give them vision for a better future. I realize that every child in Chattanooga does not have the same upbringing, the same outlook, the same opportunities, but that's not because they're not present. It's because they don't have the vision for it. So you have to work with the kids to give them the vision for it. And the same thing is true when it comes to violence. You have to give them a vision of peace in order for them to even think that it's possible. So it the whole situation left me feeling very heavy. But I'm a mother. I'm a police officer, and yes, you have seen me in various arenas around town, but it's because I passionately feel that everybody needs to understand, or at least have some empathy for situations that they may not be accustomed to. Now, I'm gonna say this real quick, and I'm gonna stop talking because I know you got to ask some more questions. But if you even polled a group of my coworkers from when I first started the job, they will tell you that I was the one who walked around asking those tough questions and having those heavy conversations, because I wanted to know. It was one of the reasons why I pursued this job. I remember being a teenager on Brainerd Road when I was growing up and wondering why we couldn't cruise the block, but then white kids could cruise the block and they were never stopped. So then my friends and I decided, well, we're going to go and park and cruise beside the white kids and see if we get stopped. And we didn't. And so that for me was an eye-opener in understanding and figuring out, hey, I don't even want to give the appearance that I'm doing something. So let me hang with the ones who don't have the appearance of doing something and see how that shakes out. And it started a dialogue. And so it's things like that we can't hide behind anymore, because it's uncomfortable. You have to have uncomfortable conversations. And I can tell you, I'm the queen of uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes I say too much, and forgive me for that. Let me just throw myself on the sword. Sometimes I have, mouth vomit, but it comes from a sincere place. And it's one of those things where I'm like, if we don't get it out in the forefront and talk about it, then it's always going to be an issue.
You say you talk a lot, but we want to hear you. You've been there for me, and I know I keep complimenting you because I feel like I owe you a lot.
Girl, I tell you, the boys create a whole nother bond.
Mary has been there for me with my son in places that y'all would never imagine. But I just want to ask you, because our sons are the same age, have you ever been afraid, or are you afraid for your son? And Glenn, I want to ask you, your son is younger. Are you nervous about, people being racist when it comes to your child? Police officers and police brutality, are you?
So recognizing that every police officer is not like me, I started Jordan out. First of all, I was partners with Julie Jacks. She and I worked on midnight shift together. She and I worked on day shift together, and I'm going to try to keep it together. But Julie and I talked a lot about our futures and what we wanted our futures to be, not only in the police department, but personally. And when she passed away, my son asked me, he said, "Mama, why did the bad man kill Miss Julie?" Mm-hmm. And that was a breaking point for me, but it was also a turning point for me. So I decided then that I was going to do something for him that my parents had not done for me. And that was to be honest and transparent and not shield him from things that I thought might be too much, because I was there to garner him through the heavy parts so that he could understand early. And so I've groomed Jordan since he was 4 on heavy conversations, speaking to him about his size, his color, his height, his voice. He's very baritone, and how that may come across to other people, even under the softest of pretenses. Right. And while that may not be right, that was my way of making sure that he stayed safe. So if you were to ask him today, you know, Jordan, what should you do on a traffic stop? Or Jordan, what should you do if you're in a crowd of people? Or Jordan, what should you do if your friends are stopped? He can tell you, because I have coached him. I have coached him to keep him safe. Mm-hmm. And like I said, regardless of whether that is right or wrong or acceptable or not, I'm doing what I have to do to keep my Black son safe, period.
Okay. See, you say, Jerry, whether it's right or wrong, I think that is wrong. That you have to coach your kids. That's wrong. Everybody should be treated the same way. Now, I do not have kids of my own, Miss Donna, so I kind of lean on the other folks to tell me about what their experiences are. But I believe it is flat wrong for people of color to have to coach their kids on how to behave on a traffic stop. We need to get away from that. We should be able to get away from that.
I would love to be able and get away from that. But since my son drove, since he drove and he would make trips from Johnson City to Chattanooga because he's still there, he loves to drive at night. For some reason, that's his time to drive. And I've talked about this on other calls, that every 30 minutes to an hour, I am calling my son to hear his voice. Not because the tire blew out, not, because I want to know if he get pulled over, if he's gotten pulled over. I've also been in a situation where Brandon has been pulled over several times because he was speeding, which he should have been, but I didn't find out until I got the speeding ticket in the mail, and my heart sank. And as a mother who, as Jerry say, who loves her Black boys, if you're a parent, hopefully you love your children, and there's no other love like it. My mom says that to me all the time. I love y'all, and you'll never know what that feels like. I'm like, well, I do. And now now I get it. But Brandon has not had his dad in his life. So I have had to say, when you get pulled over, you should make sure you do this. Make sure it looks like this. And it is unfortunate. Seeing George Floyd or seeing these officers, even something recently that's going on in our city, and we don't have to discuss that because that's not the city of Chattanooga, so I won't do that to you guys.
Thank you.
You should thank you, but I want to make sure I don't do that as respect to you all. But a lot of people do have questions. What happened to the old school where you arrest somebody and throw them in the vehicle? Why is it? Has that changed? That process, has that changed? That's just me asking.
No, it hasn't.
So what should it be?
It should be how you envision it. It should be, you pull someone over. That person has a warrant for whatever reason. They get cuffed and taken to jail, and everyone goes about their day after that. That's how it's supposed to happen. Having done this for as long as, as Dana and Jerry as well, police officers rather, we should understand and expect people aren't going to be happy about going to jail. That's the nature of the beast. That's what you signed on for, to deal with unhappy people sometimes. And so you shouldn't be personally offended when someone says something mean to you because you're taking them to jail. That's part of it. And so from my opinion, and from where I stand, the way you envision it, the way you see things and the way they should be, do you think they should go? That's pretty accurate. If you get pulled over and you were speeding, and find out that your license is revoked and you got to go to jail, I should say, ma'am, you got to go to jail, and you should probably cry a little bit because you're probably going to be upset. And I should expect
if
that.
it's me, I'm crying a lot of bit.
I should expect that. I mean, and I should expect that, and that just comes with it. But that's how that's how that's supposed to work out.
What are you all doing to combat racial injustice? What are you know, I hear you say, I love, Glenn, how you say you are talking to and checking in with younger officers. Like, what is your goal from this learning experience right now?
So even before this current crop of issues have come up, right? Even before that, this department has invested in training our officers that they do work around folks that may not look like them, may not pray like them, may not have the same outlook on the world as them. And we have a community immersion project that we inject our officers into, our cadets. And so they have those same experiences with folks who they might not have had before they became police officers. You know, we put them in places that are going to be uncomfortable purposely so they can learn about different people. So we do that on the front end. And along the way throughout your career, if you have good bosses and good sergeants and good lieutenants and captains, they also check in on you to see how you're responding to where you're working. We have all sorts of mechanics in place that if you get so many complaints, it's brought to your supervisor's attention immediately. They find out, hey, this person has had 5 complaints and we need to check in to see if there's a problem. So those things are built into our system already. We pay close attention to issues like that.
Can I you know, give you a transparent moment? For a couple of years, I actually taught at Brainerd High School, and teaching there, I realized that there were not enough teachers that looked like them.
Yeah.
They were young teachers, they were white teachers, and I'm not saying that those teachers weren't adequate. I can't say that, but they were new and they had never been around inner city kids, okay? When I think about what you said, Glenn, that you guys are exposing them, but what kind of training are you doing as you're exposing them? Because it's a whole, that's like if you put me in a group of all men, I would love that, of course, but a group of all guys, you know, I'm not speaking guy language. I got to be around y'all for a minute before I figure out, oh, I can say this and I can't. Yeah. So, and that may be a bad analogy, but that's a good analogy. Yeah, for training, like what are y'all doing to make sure that they feel comfortable in those environments and connect?
So during that community immersion piece, during that block of training that we expose them to, they not only are exposed to those folks, they're required to learn and give report on what they're learning from that experience, whether it's societal cues, whether it's social cues, whether it's culinary. I mean, whatever the thing is that the group that they're exposed to is sort of part of their cultural experience. They have to bring that back to us and say, hey, this is what I learned by hanging around with Donna Elle and Jerry Sutton for this 8-week block. We learned that Jerry doesn't like to be talked down to. We learned that Donna doesn't like to be talked to about how tall she is. We learned all these different things, and they have to report that back to us. So not only do they get assigned a group to learn from, they have to prove they've learned something.
So I can tell you, as a former director of training, I was over the curriculum for the academy, and so was Dana. We both served in that position. And recognizing that you have to expose the officers to things that they're going to see, they had disorders classes. And those disorders classes were built up around real life scenarios, meaning these things had happened before in patrol. And I mean, we've I know some people may say, wow, really? But we've slapped them. We've mimicked them being spat on. At certain points, we box with them to let them know how it feels to be hit in the face. We've gone through defensive tactics where they've been hit in certain vulnerable areas to let them know, you know, hey, this may happen and you don't need to be shocked by it. This may happen and you need to prepare for it. You're going to be cussed out. You're not going to be welcome. Some people are going to want your help. Some people are going to need your help. And it still may look different ways when it's delivered, even from what you're being exposed to in this class. So you need to expect the unexpected. Now, one thing I can say, Donna, is that, especially in the last 5 years, and I'm speaking specifically to the last 5 years, this is a Gen Z class generation. They are much more patient than even I was when I came in. And I thought I had a patient spirit. When I realized after the fact, no, I don't have the same amount of tolerance that they have. With me, it was tell me this, and you tell me this, and now I'm gonna make a decision and I'm gonna move forward with that decision based on what the law says. Whereas these kids will sit and listen and listen and listen and listen. And I'm going, okay, well, you have enough now that you need to make a decision, and they're still there listening, and they need credit for that. Now, maybe it's some of the older officers who have been here and done it for a while, who've gotten more set in routines and may not be as cordial as we would like for them to be. And that's something that we definitely, as an agency and as an industry, we have to work on our interpersonal skills. How we talk to people, how we empathize with people, explaining our actions. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a point in which you have to be safe, and then there's a point in which you should be able to communicate with the people that you're interacting with. Now, obviously, there are going to be some other factors that play in: intoxication, those people who are incapacitated for whatever reason. There's no communicating there because they're not in their right minds. But those individuals, even the ones who are upset, if you have to give them a moment to cool off in order to have a conversation with them, regardless of whether the conversation still works in their favor or not, you owe them that respect to have a conversation and say, I am arresting you for X reason. This is the process after I transport you to jail to do X, Y, Z, if that is the question. But now, on the flip side of that coin, which is one of the things that I teach in the classes, especially with the young kids, is it's not enough for you to feel that you know your rights. You have to know that you know your rights according to the law, not according to your hurts and your pains and your prejudice and whatever else. It's according to the law. And if you don't like the law, because we have some old ones still on the book, and I will tell you, I think some of them should have been taken off some time ago. But if you don't like the law, then you lobby those who have the power to change the law.
Can I ask you this? Because as I appreciate you guys sharing the processes and your training, but I think about, and I don't want to keep saying but I think about just say me and my boyfriend get into it. I have to go in and I do my job in marketing. My boss comes to my door, Donna, I need you to do this. And I'm a little snappy with him. Don't mean to be. But I realize that personally, because my job might be more internal facing than working with the community, I might have to take a step back, or I might have to get some additional help or training or things like that. I hear you talk about the officers that are new, but what are you doing for the officers that are older, been in the game for a while, who might be dealing with personal stress, whose image of people have changed through the years? They may have been I really want to support Black people, and that changed just by some incidents that they've experienced it. How are you guys getting a gauge on that, and what kind of trainings are you doing to ensure us that they're going to be okay mentally and physically?
I'll let Dana speak to that on the peer support block.
Yes, the past 3 years, we have implemented a formal peer support unit there at the police department. We have a core group of officers, and believe it or not, some of them are those old heads that you're speaking of.
I didn't call them old heads now. Please don't. I didn't say you were old heads.
Veterans. We're veteran officers.
Yeah, okay.
Who have been able to maintain a positive outlook, and they still love their jobs. Like the three of us sitting here, we still love our jobs. We love what we do. And that core group receives training on a pretty consistent basis to stay abreast of the latest resiliency trainings and officer wellness programs. And it's up to them to keep in touch with supervisors, and the supervisors are then taught different things to look for in officers that may be a little bit off cue. And it could be something simple like one of your veteran officers is never late for work, but then all of a sudden he's late a couple of times a week and his mood's kind of off. And we kind of coach those supervisors into looking for those things that might tip them off to something that might be a little bit deeper going on with the officers. So we're trying really hard to get ahead of that. And we focus on that, and part of our in-service training every year, we go down for a small block of instruction and remind them of peer support and talk to them about how if they take care of their mental health on a maintenance basis, you might not think you need it, but do it anyway. You know, just go talk to somebody, whether it's a chaplain or whether it's Captain Sutton or whether it's Miss Donna. Go talk to somebody. It doesn't matter who it is. Somebody that'll listen and let you vent, so you don't build up what we refer to as cumulative stress that will break you if you can't manage it. It can break you in this career, and unfortunately we've seen it a couple of times. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Have y'all ever been in a position where a fellow officer has they need to sit down? You have?
Yes, ma'am. And we've had to, I mean, they get pulled off the job, and sometimes they come back and sometimes they don't.
I'll tell you, so I've been through a divorce in my career, and a lot of cops have. Unfortunately, it is one of those elements in this profession. There are some people who are probably on their second or their third marriage, and it's not going well. And unfortunately, that's a statistic in this job. I can also tell you that I've had growing old woman pains, and I'm thankful that I had coworkers who saw my stress and was like, hey, maybe you ought to go talk to somebody. And I didn't realize it because I got in autopilot and I was pushing through, and they was like, hey, you know, we know you have a lot going on. Why don't you sit down and talk to somebody? I give big ups to Glenn because I pull on him all the time, and I'm surprised he hadn't sent me a bill. But it's good to have friends in the department that you can go to that you know will keep your confidence, but at the same time help you through, especially the personal issues. And then if there's job-related stress, the peer support program is in place to even help you with that. EAP is also in place if you want to see a medical professional. And then of course, you know, as you get older, like I said, the old lady pains, you know, you have chemical changes that occur. And at first I tried medicine and I was like, yeah, I don't like taking a lot of medicine. So then I started working out, and I even out, and I'm good.
You can say it, Terry. It's called menopause. You can say it. You know?
Yes, that's the word.
I wasn't going to touch that one. I was saying,
that's what it is, you know? That's just what it is.
Yeah, it just, you know, you think that you're doing well.
Yes.
Like I said, your peers see a difference in you of, you know, you're not talking as much as you used to, or you're snapping at everybody all the time. You know, what's up with that? Yeah. And once it was brought to my attention, I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. Let me get back in the gym. Because I had gotten sedentary. You know, Donna, at one point I was running all the time. Girl, hurt my back, stopped running. Just stopped everything. And now that I'm doing stuff to maintain myself again, I feel good. So, you know, we have to encourage one another to be our very best self. And that's regardless of whether you're police or whatever. Yeah. I had one of my sergeants just yesterday said, yeah, Captain, you called me fat. I said, no, I did not call you fat. I said that I was concerned about your health and wondered what you were doing.
You called him fat.
That translates as you calling him fat. I'm just saying.
Hey, man, I'm concerned about his well-being. I want him to be the best version of himself.
I love that. And thank you for holding your peers accountable. So Glenn,
because a lot of times when we go through those weight fluctuations, is how I refer to them, there's something else internal going on there, and we're using eating as a coping mechanism.
COVID eating.
And it's not just that you're fat, there's something going on there.
That at all. I have no clue what you're talking about. Just in case you don't know, I've lost 100 pounds, so I totally agree. So, hey, Glenn, I do want to ask you this because you're the fellow that's representing today. You are a Black man, and I didn't even think about asking you this question. As a Black man, when you put on your uniform, are you a Black man? Or are you a police officer, or are you both?
I am both. I've been a cop for 26 years. I've been a cop longer than I've not been a cop. I started really early. But I knew going in that this is a short window of my life. This is just a small part of my whole evolution. So I was a Black man when I started this job. I'm a Black man during this job. And I'm gonna be a Black man after this job is over. And so that part's been consistent. You asked early on, had my racial integrity ever been questioned? It's a whole lot more visible now because you have Facebook and Instagram and cell phone cameras. So you view and you get to film folks being challenged that way now. But it's always been that way. It was never popular to be a young Black cop. That's never been a popular thing.
Why is it not popular? Why is it not popular?
Because culturally, it's just, well, first of all, policing is an enforcement of rules for the most part. No one likes to be made to do what they're supposed to do. And so that's you're gonna have that dynamic at play regardless. But because of the history of policing in this country, it's never been popular to be a young Black police officer. I knew that coming in the door. And so my skin has gotten thicker progressively over the years to where now, yeah, I've had protesters say all kind of crazy, racial slurs. I'm equipped for it. What I do worry about are some of the younger Black officers, because they might not be as emotionally solid as I am. And so, yeah, those concerns exist. But as far as I go, I'm a Black man all day long and twice on Sunday. So I'm good.
I asked Jerry the question earlier about were you surprised by these events that have happened in our country, right up the street in Atlanta, some things that we've seen at home. Are you surprised?
No. The things that happened in Atlanta, this happened in Minnesota, there's a huge disconnect between the Black community. Well, actually, any marginalized or minority community, there's a huge disconnect between those communities and law enforcement. And as long as that gap exists, there's not going to be any trust. There are cops that don't trust minorities, point of fact. There are minorities that don't trust cops, point of fact. And until we can bridge that, you're going to always have flare-ups where those two parties come together. It's predictable.
Somebody asked the question, have you all ever been told to target minorities?
No. But I don't know if I said it loud enough. No.
I wish y'all could see all of their faces right now because all of them are like, duh, now.
People ask very pointed questions as far as that goes about, hey, do you guys have a quota about this? Or have you guys been told to make sure Black kids don't hang out on Brandon Road like Jerry mentioned when we were kids? No, we haven't. And we're the folks that give those orders. We're in positions now where we'd be the ones giving those orders. And I know I've never said, hey guys, when you click on shift today, make sure you go out there and bother some Black folks. Don't come back without bothering some Black folks. I've never given that order.
Thank you for not giving that order.
I haven't either, just so you know.
Just for the record.
That clear. Yes.
Let me clarify this though, Donna. So I've been asked this question multiple times over the years. Do you all profile? Yeah. We profile behavior. We look at certain cues, like when you're driving, do you drift left of center? Are your tags proper? Are they properly registered? Is a tail light or headlight out? Are you speeding? That is profiling behavior, a driving behavior. When someone is walking down the street, are they doing so suspiciously? But what is suspiciously? Because it's not against the law to walk down the street. Okay, are you walking down the street with a trench coat on in 100-degree weather, constantly checking over your shoulder? Now that's a little weird, and somebody might call it suspicious. Again, let's go by the law, and what the law says is this thing or is not that thing, and then take what you see and apply it to the law. Does it check the box? Check the box, check the box. You might need to investigate it. I've even seen the videos where the people say, I was pulled over and they said that I fit the description. Well, here's the thing. Aside from news media, and I know that you're familiar with this, most people don't have police scanners. So most people are not aware of the calls that come out. We answer what, 180, 190,000 calls a
year.
So sometimes all we have is a physical description of something. And if they say the person is a black male driving a gray Altima in the area of 2100 block of Macaulay Avenue, just last seen going east, then if there's a car in that area and it's a black male in a car, then we have to have due diligence in investigating that car. And it may be enough clues to stop the car. It may not be enough clues to stop the car. I say that to simply say that I know as Black people, we are so wounded by the many things that we see in the media that are absolutely negative and absolutely wrong, that we automatically assume that, ooh, now I'm a target, and every time I get stopped, the police just targeting me because I'm Black. Well, I can tell you, I've been stopped in a whole bunch of places, and it wasn't because I was Black. A few times it's because I was speeding.
Because you drive too fast is why you were stopped.
So says the skillet. But anyway, and I have said, even to my folks that I'm in charge of, we all make mistakes. I know I've probably made some in the last, we've been on this call now 51 minutes. We all make mistakes, and it's not wrong to have made a mistake. It's not correcting that mistake that's wrong.
Can I ask you this? Because I think about sometimes you might get pulled over, Jerry, and it's a such thing that I feel like sometimes it looks like over-policing. Over-policing. Is there a such thing as over-policing, too many cops in one area or one stop or one location?
So look at it like this. You know how when you go out with your sorors,
right,
and there's 5 of you sitting at a table. Well, if one of you sees something on the opposite side of the room and another person goes over to see what's going on the other side of the room, now you got 2, and then the other 3 are wondering, why is it taking them so long? And then the other 3 go over there to the other side of the room to investigate what's going on. Are y'all over hanging out with that thing? Or are you investigating to find out what's going on?
I can
oftentimes,
what happens like when you first get to the stop and all of them just come out? Like, so, I'm being honest because I've seen that.
It's a fair question. So we work in shifts and we work in platoons. And on certain days, those platoons are going to overlap. So you have more bodies on the street. So when the call volume is not high, then you have officers who are free to do more proactive work. But if they hear a partner get out on a call or a stop, yeah, they will go over to say, hey, you know, what do you have? What have you got? But eventually that fans out too. Or unfortunately, and it's one of the things that we tell them not to do, but they stand back and they become unconscious observers too. You know, but they're going, well, yeah, there's a stop. But hey, buddy, did you see the football game the other day? You hear this and that? They're still present, not necessarily engaged. But to the community, I know it seems like it's piling up. And you're wondering, Lord, I just had registration violation. Why did 7 police show up?
Yeah.
It's not the citizen. It's the group behavior of the police officers.
But just saying being that citizen and they over there talking about the game, I'm thinking like, oh, are they gonna get me? because that oversaturation is going to put me in a position where I feel like I'm on the defense.
And those are the things that we have to have some serious conversations about. The appearance of that and what it really means and how to get away from it. It's just hard when groups, people with common factors between themselves, it's hard to divide a group, be it citizens, police officers, deltas, zetas, whatever the case may be. In order to co-mingle those groups, you got to find those commonalities again and come off of the defensive. And that's hard to do, especially in the current climate. But those are the very conversations that we do have to have.
Yeah, we need to do a better job of explaining. If you show up to a traffic stop and there's already 2 cars there, just keep going. Or if there's already a car there. But now it is typical on traffic stops. If somebody gets out, there will be at least one other officer get there to them pretty quickly. But we need to do a better job of coaching our officers to just keep going if the need is not there.
Well, I'll also add this, and I'm gonna push back a little bit, Dawn. I'll push back a little bit on this one. So if like Jerry described, it's you and 4 of your sorors in an SUV together, right? And I pull you over. Well, if everything goes well, all things are fine. But right now, as it stands, it's one guy, me on the side of the road, and it's 5 people in that SUV. And so, yeah, to folks that are driving by, it looks like it's a pretty balanced equation, but it's really not. And so if something were to go sideways in there, so I have to arrest you for something, now it's me against 5 people as opposed to just the cars don't count is what I'm boiling it down to. And I would be very, very upset if my partner, Jerry Sutton and Donna Vaughn, didn't come from a couple of blocks away to check on me if I'm out with 1 car, but I'm out with 5 people really. And so I think sometimes when citizens drive by and they go, why are they all piled up on the side of the road with that 1 car? Yeah, it's 1 car, but it has 5 people in it. And it's just little old me on the side of the road with them. That safety is a big part of that as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was saying, typically, if you get out on a traffic stop, Jerry or me, 1 is coming to you.
Yeah.
So you'll have another car there with you. But if the other 2 cars coming from down the road come by and they see Jerry and you with your patrol cars out there, they might stop and say, hey, is everything okay? But as soon as that is established, then they can go somewhere else to talk about the football game.
True.
Yeah.
True. So would you guys like to see more diverse officers on the force?
Yes.
Please. So here's the thing.
Yes.
I too have worked with recruiting. And we have been to historically Black colleges and universities. We've been to high schools. We've been to community colleges. We've been to churches. And it is very, very difficult to recruit Black applicants. For some of the ones, and I say some of the ones that we do get, they come in with so many strikes against them. And citizens demand that we do a good scrubbing of our applicants to weed out people who may be racist and violent and have tendencies to do wrong. And we do that. But that scrubbing also scrubs out a lot of minorities. Now, I'm not picking on minorities. I'm just going by sheer numbers. If you have 10 people, 7 of them are white and 3 of them are Black, and you scrub out by sheer numbers, you're going to scrub out more Blacks than whites simply because they're underrepresented. The whole point to that is, please apply. I'm going to say something that my college professor told me my junior year in college. It almost took his tenure away, but I stood up for him because I believed in what he said. He said, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. And when you fall for anything, you have the tendency to sit on the back of the bus. Do you want to be at the back of the bus, or do you want to be the one driving the bus? I decided then that I'm going to drive the bus, I'm going to direct the bus, I'm going to get some more buses, I'm going to make sure the other folks have room on the bus. I'm not going to sit back there and become complacent and just let things go by. And that's why I don't mind the protesters. But like Glenn, I am ready for us to shift gears and get to the work, because we hear you and we don't disagree. I can't say that we agree with the expletives and the disrespect, but you know, who wants that? And that's just being a person. That's not anything about the uniform.
So what work are you referring to? Are you guys strategizing? Because most of the protests, the goal is to have a strategy. Are you guys strategizing during this time as well?
We definitely are. I have reached out to some organizations about setting up town hall meetings to have these discussions and see, this is what we are doing. What, in addition to this, or with the exception of some of this, would you like for us to do? And who among you is willing to stick with us to make sure that it gets done the way that you want it done? Because it's not enough to get out and yell and scream and be mad at us now and then walk away and be like, well, y'all should have done X, Y, and Z. No, if you want this police department to be the department that exemplifies the standards and ideals that you say we should have, then you should keep us accountable. You should walk alongside us. You should be there to make sure that we're doing a good job and that we are properly communicating with you and hearing your concerns all along the way, not just when something happens. So we're ready for those conversations.
What happens when, we have some community members that are afraid of the police? What would you say to them if they're watching or listening?
First of all, we're people. And just like your grandmama used to tell you, honey, ain't nothing to fear but fear itself. At some point, somebody's got to step out on the limb and be courageous enough to have the conversation. I mean, there's no harm in asking a question. Contrary to some of the inflammatory things that you see on TV, I can tell you, our chief of police was one of the very ones to step out after the George Floyd.
Can I read it? Can I read it?
Yes.
Read it. I've been waiting to read this. There is no need to see what video. There's no need to see more video. No need to wait to see how it plays out. There is no need to put a knee on someone's neck for 9 minutes, all caps. There is a need to do something. If you wear a badge and you don't have an issue with it, turn it in.
Turn it in.
Turn it in, Chief Roddy said.
Yep.
Turn it in.
National news on that. When y'all heard that quote, what did you think?
Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah. Yep. And like I said, we're here for it. We are here. Exactly.
That's my Facebook cover photo. Turn it in.
Yep.
Turn it in. Glenn, what did you say?
It was predictable. I mean, I know the man who made that statement, so I wasn't surprised by it. I mean,
yeah,
it was expected.
How can we recruit more Black officers for you? Do you guys need help in that? Maybe
So here's the thing. Like you asked about recruiting earlier, and do we want more diverse members of our department to exist, right? And of course the answer is yes. But I mean, to flash back to even some of the protests, there are folks that live in this city who I've been sort of grooming and sort of mentoring to and recruiting to join the police department. And they come down to the protest to see how things are going to go. And they see how people in the community talk to the police.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, you know what, man? I'm going to take my degree somewhere else. Because y'all put up with this stuff I wouldn't want to put up with. And so it works against us. And I understand why people are down there protesting, and I get it. But what people also have to understand is you can't call for more minority police officers and at the same time roast the minority police officers that are right there in front of you. Those two things cancel each other out.
How should the community approach you guys to have, because I know, Jerry, you mentioned the town hall meetings. What would be the best way for us to communicate with you all moving forward? I
mean, if you see a cop, if you're interested in what's going on, talk to them. I mean, we're, like Jerry said 1,000 times, we're all just people. I mean, folks reach out to me all the time through social media. And for the most part, if I can make it happen, I interact with them. I mean, you just have to talk to people. I mean, the only thing that's going to dismiss the fear and the mistrust is building relationships. And until we can get to a place where we're okay with doing that, it's not going to get better.
Now, let me say this though. So I'm going to use the analogy of a husband and wife. You know, when husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, whatever you want to call it, when y'all get into an argument and tempers have flared and emotions are high, that might not be the best time to sit down and have an intellectual conversation. You have to allow yourself a cooling period. But once you do cool off and you come to the table with your concerns, be open to change and whatever that looks like, and understand that everybody's not going to walk off getting everything that they wanted. And that's just a fact. That's a fact of life. And if you can't accept that, then you're not adulting. We want change as much as the community does. We are willing to do the work. Matter of fact, I'm putting this challenge out there. I'm over East Chattanooga, East Lake, and Highland Park. I am challenging every household in that area to go to nextdoor.com and sign up and become a block captain in your area to make sure that your area is the environment that you want to live in, and that people are exemplifying the ideals of behavior that you think are right, fair, and just, and that the officers working in that neighborhood are just as much a part of solving the problems as you are. Because, hey, anything worth having is worth investing in. And if you want us to invest in cleaning up your neighborhood and making sure that your children are safe and that grandmama can walk up and down the street and sit out on her porch and not have to worry about being robbed or shot at or whatever the case may be, then we need you to be as much a part of the solution as we are. And yes, get us away from those things that do not have an overtone of law. If it's mental health and more money needs to be put into mental health, by all means, Lord, we want to see that happen, because we're not doctors. We're not plumbers. We're not teachers. Although we do some social work, our profession is law enforcement. So we are willing to work with the agencies that do those things and respond in just the shadows or whatever that may look like. But it is going to require us getting to the table and having some tough conversations and walking away from that conversation, not hating the other person, but instead going, you know what? I'm going to agree to disagree with you until I can come back with something else that may solve this issue, and we sit down and have another conversation. And again, I go back to Glenn and I. We have some very spirited debates on how things should be executed. And I know I'm always right, but he concedes to the fact that, no, I'm just kidding. That we have the ability to agree and disagree about the right way to do things. And I know I'm not always right, although I'm very passionate about my points. I know I'm not always right. So when meeting with the community and trying to bring on those individuals who want to work with us, we know from the onset that we have some issues that we have to work through. Absolutely. And we're willing to do that. We ask you to partner with us and get it done.
How do we get these bad apples of the bunch off the force? How do we do that?
So that's the partnership as well. So we're looking out for it on our side of it. If someone mistreats you on the side of a road, on a traffic stop, or comes to your house to take a report, and you don't see, they don't give you the level of service that you think you deserve, make a report about it. Let someone know about it. Because if all you do is get on Facebook and say, I can't believe Glenn came to my house and he was rude, talked bad to my husband, did X, Y, and Z to your Facebook friends, the department might not ever hear about that. And so we're looking out for reports from citizens and from fellow officers when bad behavior exists, but the citizens have to report it as well. You have to let us know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's very important, Glenn, because just this week, I got a text from a friend of mine that said, this is what happened to me. And I said, well, if you felt disrespected or you've been done wrong, you need to file a complaint with the police department. But then I got the I'm tired of filing complaints. This has happened to me over and over. Black male driver, it's happened over. And I said, you can't give up. File the complaint. So no matter who you are, but especially, you know, our people of color, our friends of color, if you feel like you've been disrespected, file a complaint, because the chances are you're not being disrespected by, you're not the only one that's being disrespected by that officer. The officers like that develop behaviors, and those behaviors are what draw our attention to what needs to be paid attention to. It's kind of like what Glenn was saying. They develop a pattern of behavior. So don't, even though if you're a person of color, you might feel like you've been singled out and stopped because you were Black. You're not the only one that officer's treating that way, I'm pretty sure. So we need to develop those patterns of behavior before we can move forward on these bad apples that we have. You know, we've got them.
Yeah, you know, we're because there are more cameras out there now.
Yes.
You know, we're seeing a lot more, and this stuff has been going on. And I don't personally feel that it's going to go away anytime soon. But I do want to ask you all, how can we move forward to help you? What do you need from this community to move forward?
So you know, you mentioned that cameras are everywhere, right? And there are always these images of cops behaving badly on Facebook or wherever else you might get your media from. In my assessment, you get so much of that because no one walks around with a camera filming me help a kid learn how to ride a bicycle. So you don't get a balanced representation of what's going on out there. I would suggest that if folks want things to progress forward, yeah, keep recording and keep reporting when you see cops doing something wrong. I'm not saying don't do that. Conversely, when you see us doing it right, make mention of that as well. It makes the conversation easier to have. It makes both sides more receptive to what the other side has to say. Because right now we're not getting a balanced representation of how things happen. I mean, like Jerry said, we have about 182,000 calls a year that we answer. If you see on social media 20 bad instances of bad police behavior, I mean, do the math on that. There's 20 bad interactions. There are 180,000 interactions in total. We're doing it way often more right than we're doing it wrong. But that's not being shown in public, in social media or anywhere else. And so folks have to realize that, yeah, there are bad apples that you mentioned. And we're all, both citizens as well as police officers, trying to get rid of those folks. But we also have to champion the ones who aren't doing it wrong. I think that's just as important.
And the majority of the 800,000 police officers across the United States are doing it right.
Yes. I can tell you of cases, and again, I can only speak on the officers that I'm in charge of. I know one officer, and I'm going to mention him by name, Brian Bowler. He's not mine, but he used to work in my area. He has taken whole Christmas to families. He has taken old ladies to get their medicine and to their doctor's appointments, sometimes on his off days. He didn't have to do that. I know officers who make sure that students have their back to school supplies. I know that we have organizations that is between the fire department, the police department, and EMS, the Forgotten Child Fund, that does that same thing every year. And officers who come in and volunteer their time, their holiday time, to make sure that these orders are filled, to make sure that these kids have toys, to make sure that some of them receive help from social services to have a warm house and electricity on in their houses. But no, we don't go around filming ourselves going, hey, about to feed a kid, about to take grandma to her doctor's appointment. Come on, that's vain. We don't do that. But there are a lot of people who took this job because they genuinely have a heart for serving other people. And sometimes that looks like, hey man, I know you're driving without your license, but I also know that you're just driving to work and back home and maybe to the grocery store to pick up your kids, move them around. So I'm not going to give you a ticket this time. go ahead and save your money and try to get your driver's license back so that you don't keep incurring problems. And they have that discretion to do, and they do that. But again, it's not like, you know, we're walking around going, hey, let a guy go today. You know, he was driving without a license. Hold on, let me post that to Facebook. Anybody who's doing that genuinely is not going to film that.
Right.
So yeah, you see the bad stuff. You're not necessarily going to see the good stuff. The same way you know me, Donna, and you know the type of person I am, there's a whole bunch of other folks in this city who knows Officer X and how he or she is. And you draw on those personal experiences and hope that through interaction, and especially relationship building, that becomes the status quo, not the majority.
Before we get out of here, is there anything that you want the community to know, the protesters to know, our citizens to know, fellow officers to know?
I'll let the lady start.
I'm going to say the same thing here that I said to my officers yesterday. I am Black enough to do this job. I am blue enough to do this job. I signed up for this, and I knew when I signed up for this that there were going to be good days and there were going to be bad days. And I stand by my oath, regardless of whatever day it is. I am here to protect. I am here to serve. And I am here to mentor those under me so that they do the same things. And even on the days when we always don't get it right, we are still here.
Thank you.
Amen. And after 25 plus years, I still love my job. My current position is head over community service. So I spend a lot of time out in the community. I love my community. I was born and raised here. And to the protesters, I would even like to say to them, we hear what you're saying. We do hear you. We're doing the best we can to work with you. We got to meet in the middle somehow. And to our community, I would just ask them to continue their support for us, and just know that the majority of cops in this United States are good. We are good people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I'm going to steal Jerry's word. I think she used courageous when you asked her what word she'd use. I think I've made it through 25 years of law enforcement because I am courageous, because I'm willing to take ownership when a cop does something wrong. I'll say, hey, we screwed that up. But I'm also courageous enough to, if a cop does something right and the community doesn't like it, but it was the right thing to do, and that person happens to be a Black person or a white person or an Asian person or whatever, I'm courageous enough to support my guys when they do it right, but the public doesn't like it. And so I think I've been able to survive this career and to rise through it because I am very pragmatic in that sense. I want the right thing done for the right reasons at the right time. I think more of us need to step up that way.
I want to say that you all put your lives on the line for us every single day that you're working. And I just want to honestly be very transparent and say thank you for what you do. I know these last couple of weeks have not been easy because you've been hit from all sides. 4 weeks, she said exactly 4 weeks. You all have been hit from all sides, and it has not been easy continuing to do your job every day and wear your blue and still be human, as Jerry said. We are human. So I'm going to leave you with a quote because I started everybody else out with a quote. It says, one of the most courageous things you can do is identify yourself. Know who you are, what you believe in, and where you want to go. And based on the conversations you guys have given us today, it let me inside because, I want to be mad at somebody. And I know you guys are seeing this. We all want to be mad at somebody, but these are people I see in the community all the time. And I can't be mad at you. People are mad at me because I chose the profession of marketing or radio personality, but there's still a job to do. And like you said, there are good apples in a bunch. And I want to band with you to say however we can get those bad apples out this bunch. We're going to make sure we do that together through our community, through the country, and just keep doing what you were doing. And when we were little, we used to look up to police officers. Y'all remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
Police officers, firefighters, and we would see you all in those uniforms, and my mom would run me up to the police officer and introduce me, and I knew them by names. And I challenge people in the community to be able to lean on you guys in good times and in bad times. But I just want to say thank you for doing this with me, because I know y'all have turned some away. And Jerry, we saw you kneel, girl.
Gotta say, like I said, Donna, right is right and wrong is wrong. I stand against the injustice. I stand against the police brutality. I stand against racism that doesn't change just because I have a uniform on, regardless of whether, like I said, you're black in skin color or you're blue wearing a uniform. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And I stand against that which is wrong, period.
Well, thank you for what you do. I hope you hear my heart when I say I appreciate for what you do. And if you ever have to arrest me, I will cry like a baby girl. Hopefully that never happens. Thank y'all. Anytime y'all want to
Thank you, Miss Donna.
let me know. Bye, y'all.
See ya.